Part 1, The Beginning, Hera, Hercules' Childhood, and Apollo's Prophecy. In ancient Greece, where rugged mountains embraced vast seas, people believed the gods of Olympus were watching every step of humankind. In those days, a tale was etched into the memory of mankind, the epic journey of Hercules, son of Zeus and immortal Alcmene. From the very start, Hercules' fate was far from peaceful. Zeus, king of the gods, was notorious for his amorous affairs. When he fell in love with Alcmene, a gentle mortal woman, Hera, Zeus' wife, burned with jealousy. She vowed that the half-god child would never live in peace. Hercules was born on a starry night. His body was small, yet his eyes shone with extraordinary light. Hera wasted no time. She sent 2 venomous snakes into the infant's cradle to kill him. But to everyone's astonishment, when the servants rushed in, they found baby Hercules holding the snakes in his bare hands, strangling them with a carefree smile. The news spread throughout the land, this child bore divine strength. As he grew, Hercules' body grew massive, his strength unmatched. He learned archery, chariot driving, wrestling, surpassing every companion. Yet, along with his strength, Hera never ceased sowing madness into his mind. One day, under a fit of insanity sent by Hera, Hercules committed a terrible crime: he killed his own wife and children. When the madness cleared, he fell into despair. His cries of grief echoed across the land. Racked with guilt, Hercules abandoned everything, determined to atone. He traveled to the temple of Apollo, god of prophecy and light. Kneeling before the sacred statue, he pleaded, "O great God, show me the path to atone for this crime." Apollo's voice resounded from afar, stern yet compassionate. "There is but one way: you must serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 impossible labors. Each will cleanse a part of your guilt. If you succeed, you will be purified, your name immortalized, and perhaps even gain divinity." Hercules bowed, his heart ablaze with resolve. His sin was too great, but the harder the task, the more he welcomed it. From then on, Hercules' life would be tied to a legendary journey. And so, under Hera's schemes and Eurystheus' contempt, Hercules set out on his first labor, to face a beast that had terrorized Nemea, the monstrous lion. Open Book Part 2, The First Labor, the Nemean Lion. When Hercules first arrived at King Eurystheus' palace, the cowardly ruler devised a deadly task: to slay the Nemean lion. This was no ordinary beast. Enormous in size, with claws sharp as blades and jaws strong enough to crush bronze, it was said that no weapon could pierce its hide. The people of Nemea lived in constant terror. Many warriors had attempted the hunt, armed with spears, swords, and bows, but none returned. Each night, the lion's roar shook the mountains. Eurystheus thought smugly, "This time Hercules will surely perish, and I will be rid of him forever." But Hercules was undaunted. Armed with his bow, a quiver of arrows, a sword, and a massive wooden club, he journeyed to Nemea. The encounter in the cave. The path led him into a valley shrouded in gloom. By dusk, he stood before a cavern's dark maw. The air was thick, reeking of blood and decay. A thunderous roar shattered the silence, and 2 blazing eyes emerged from the shadows. The lion leapt forth, its body a living wall of muscle. Hercules loosed an arrow straight into its chest. Clang! The arrow snapped uselessly against its hide. Another shot, aimed at the eyes, was batted aside by a swipe of its paw. Sword and spear were equally useless. The lion's invulnerability was terrifying. A battle of strength. Realizing weapons were futile, Hercules cast them aside. The lion lunged, claws tearing through the air. He sidestepped, seizing its body in his arms. A furious struggle erupted. The earth quaked beneath them, trees splintered, rocks split apart. Hercules wrestled with every ounce of his divine strength, forcing the lion down, but it rose again with primal fury. Back and forth they clashed, until finally, Hercules coiled his mighty arms around its neck, tightening. The lion thrashed, roared, and wheezed, then at last fell silent. The once unstoppable beast lay lifeless. The lion's pelt. Victorious, Hercules faced another challenge: how to prove it. Its hide was impervious. Then he discovered the secret: only the lion's own claws could cut its skin. Using them, he flayed the golden pelt and draped it over himself as an impenetrable armor. Its head became a hood, its fierce visage now a crown of glory. Eurystheus' terror. When Hercules returned with the lion's skin, Eurystheus turned pale with fright. He could scarcely believe his eyes. Overcome with panic, the king hid inside a great bronze jar to avoid facing the hero. From that day forth, Eurystheus decreed that Hercules must never again enter the palace, but receive his tasks from afar. For the king dreaded that the hero's very presence would reveal his own cowardice. The end of the first labor. The first labor was complete. Hercules had proven that courage and raw strength could overcome even a beast thought immortal. Cloaked in the lion's pelt, eyes blazing with resolve, he prepared for the trials yet to come. But the path ahead was darker still, and Hera, watching from Olympus, schemed anew. Part 3, The Second Labor, the Lernaean Hydra. Not long after the Nemean lion fell, King Eurystheus sent word again. This time, the task was far more sinister. Hercules was to defeat the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent monster that dwelled in the swamps of Lerna. Unlike the lion, the Hydra was no solitary beast. It was born of the monstrous Typhon and Echidna, kin to horrors that even the gods feared. It lurked in a fetid marsh, coiled in shadow, its 9 heads hissing in unison. One of those heads was said to be immortal, and when one head was severed, 2 more would grow in its place. Eurystheus, in his cowardice, was certain this trial would end Hercules' story forever. Hera herself smiled, for she had raised the Hydra as her own weapon of vengeance. Into the swamp. Hercules marched into the marshlands, the ground sinking beneath his steps, the air heavy with mist and decay. Each breath tasted of poison. He raised his club and called out with a booming voice. Hydra! Show yourself! From the muck, the monster slithered forth. Its body writhed endlessly, each serpentine head snapping and spitting venom. The swamp seemed to tremble under its weight. The air filled with a chorus of hissing that chilled the blood. The battle begins. Hercules struck first, swinging his sword. A head flew off, but before it hit the ground, 2 more sprouted from the stump, shrieking with fury. Again he struck, again the heads multiplied. Venom sprayed across the ground, burning holes into the soil. For the first time, Hercules felt frustration rising. Strength alone was not enough. Each blow made the beast stronger. The torch of Iolaus. But Hercules was not alone. His loyal nephew, Iolaus, had followed him into the marsh. From a hill nearby, he shouted. Uncle! Burn the stumps before they can regrow. Hercules' eyes lit with sudden understanding. He seized a burning torch, and each time he hacked a head, Iolaus rushed in, pressing the flame against the wound. The flesh hissed, blackened, and sealed shut. No new heads grew. One by one, the Hydra's screeching voices fell silent. The battle turned. The immortal head. At last, only the immortal head remained. Larger than the rest, its fangs dripped venom so potent that even gods would fear its touch. Hercules did not dare strike it down. Instead, he crushed it beneath a massive boulder, trapping it forever in the swamp's depths. When the battle ended, Hercules dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood. From that day on, his arrows would carry a lethal sting, wounds that no mortal could heal. Eurystheus' deception. When Hercules returned, Eurystheus once more shrank with fear. Yet Hera whispered in his ear, urging him to deny the hero his glory. This labor cannot count, Eurystheus declared, trembling in his bronze jar. You did not fight alone. You had your nephew's help. Thus, though the Hydra was slain, the king refused to credit Hercules with the victory. But the people knew the truth. They told tales of how the hero had conquered a nightmare, combining might with wit, and forging weapons deadlier than before. Toward the next labor. Though cheated of honor, Hercules did not falter. Each trial only strengthened his resolve. He had learned that brute force was not always the key, cunning and allies could turn the tide. From the heights of Olympus, Hera's eyes blazed with rage. Twice now, her schemes had failed. But she would not relent. And so, the next labor was proclaimed: Hercules must capture the golden-horned Ceryneian hind, a creature sacred to Artemis herself. Part 4, the third labor, the Ceryneian hind. After the Hydra fell, Eurystheus and Hera devised a subtler trial. This time, it was not brute strength they sought to test, but patience, restraint, and reverence for the gods. Hercules was commanded to capture the Ceryneian hind, a creature of dazzling beauty and sacred to Artemis, goddess of the hunt. This deer was unlike any mortal beast. Its golden antlers gleamed like polished bronze, its hooves of silver struck sparks against stone. Swift as the wind, it roamed the forests of Cerynea, impossible to catch. To harm it was to provoke Artemis' wrath, a fate even Zeus himself might hesitate to face. Eurystheus, with malice in his voice, smirked. Bring it to me alive. Fail, and your soul will wander forever. A year of pursuit. Hercules set out alone into the wilderness. The hind's tracks were faint, vanishing as quickly as morning dew. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Through valleys and over mountains, across rivers and snowy peaks, he pursued the shining deer. Sometimes he caught sight of its radiant antlers glinting through the trees, only for the hind to vanish like a golden phantom. At night, beneath the stars, Hercules whispered to himself. No matter how far you run, I will not falter. The chase lasted nearly a full year. Yet Hercules never surrendered. His strength could move mountains, but here it was endurance and patience that mattered most. The capture. At last, one dawn, by the banks of the river Ladon, Hercules saw the hind pause to drink. Silently, he crept close. With unmatched speed, he loosed an arrow, not to kill, but to graze its leg, slowing its flight. Before it could escape, Hercules leapt forward and caught it gently in his arms. The deer struggled, eyes wide with fear, but Hercules whispered softly. Be still, noble one. I mean you no harm. Artemis intervenes. As he bound the hind, the forest stirred with divine presence. From the shadows emerged Artemis, tall and radiant, her silver bow gleaming at her side. Beside her stood Apollo, his golden light illuminating the glade. Artemis' voice rang sharp as an arrow. Hercules! How dare you lay hands upon my sacred creature? Release it, or face my wrath. Hercules bowed his head deeply, though his heart thundered. Great goddess, forgive me. It is not my will but the command of Eurystheus. I take no joy in this act. Grant me this one mercy, and I swear upon my soul the hind will suffer no harm. Artemis studied him, her gaze piercing. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the weight of his atonement. Slowly, she lowered her bow. Very well, son of Zeus. Take the hind to Eurystheus. But when your duty is done, release it to the wild, for it belongs to me. The return. Carrying the golden-horned hind, Hercules returned to Eurystheus' palace. The king licked his lips with greed, reaching out to claim the deer. But before his hands could touch it, Hercules pulled back, recalling Artemis' warning. I was commanded to deliver it, and so I have, Hercules declared firmly. But it is not yours to keep. Before the king could protest, Hercules released the hind, which bounded away into the forest, vanishing in a flash of gold and silver. Eurystheus trembled with fury, yet he dared not openly defy the gods. Instead, he swallowed his rage and muttered. Then we shall see if you fare as well with your next labor. Toward the next trial. Thus ended the third labor. Hercules had proven not only strength and endurance, but also humility before the gods. From Olympus, Artemis watched, and though she had nearly loosed her wrath upon him, she now regarded the hero with reluctant respect. But peace was fleeting. Hera whispered once more into Eurystheus' ear, and the next labor was declared. Hercules must bring back alive the Erymanthian boar, a beast of monstrous size that ravaged the countryside with tusks sharp as spears. The road of trial stretched ever onward. Part 5, the fourth labor, the Erymanthian boar. After the golden-horned hind was freed, Eurystheus sought a new torment. This time, he ordered Hercules to capture alive the Erymanthian boar, a beast of colossal size that haunted the slopes of Mount Erymanthus. The boar was no ordinary animal. Its eyes burned red like embers, its bristles stood like iron spikes, and its tusks were long and sharp enough to tear through trees. It ravaged the land, destroyed fields, and gored any hunter who dared approach. Its roar echoed through the mountains like thunder, spreading terror to every village below. Eurystheus, trembling in his palace, hoped the monster would tear Hercules apart. Hera, watching from Olympus, smiled darkly. The journey begins. Hercules set out, trudging through thick snow and jagged cliffs. Winter winds howled across the peaks, biting into his flesh, but he pressed on. Along the way, he came to the home of Pholus, a kind centaur. Pholus welcomed him warmly, offering shelter by the fire. Hercules, weary from travel, asked about the boar. It roams the high slopes, Pholus said gravely. Many have tried to hunt it. None return. Be cautious, for even you cannot face it in open ground. To steel himself, Hercules shared wine with his host. But the scent of the sacred drink soon drew other centaurs from the forest. They charged in, enraged that Hercules had opened the vessel without their consent. The centaur's wrath. Suddenly, the mountains echoed with the pounding of hooves. Dozens of centaurs stormed in, armed with stones, clubs, and spears. Hercules fought back, his bow singing with arrows dipped in Hydra's poison. Each shot felled a foe, the venom burning through their veins. But tragedy struck. Amid the chaos, Pholus accidentally pricked himself with one of Hercules' poisoned arrows. He collapsed, lifeless, a victim of the very hospitality he had offered. Hercules charged, swinging his club, but the beast dodged with surprising speed. It slashed with its tusks, ripping apart the ground where Hercules had stood a heartbeat before. The hero gave chase, driving it upward, higher into the mountains. The snow deepened, slowing the creature's charge. With a final surge, Hercules leapt upon it. Wrestling against its massive bulk, he forced it into the drifts, binding its legs with chains of bronze. The boar thrashed, roared, and churned the snow, but at last, it was subdued. Terror in the palace. Dragging the beast behind him, Hercules descended the mountain and brought it to Eurystheus. When the king saw the monstrous boar, its tusks gleaming like blades, he shrieked in terror. In a fit of cowardice, he leapt into his great bronze jar once again, trembling and refusing to emerge. From within the echoing metal walls, his voice quavered. Enough. Enough. Take it away. Hercules laughed, his voice booming. You commanded me to bring it alive, and so I have. Behold your prize. But the king could not even look upon it. Hour'd the next trial. Thus ended the fourth labor. Hercules had conquered a beast of sheer strength and savagery, relying not only on force but on strategy, using the mountain itself to weaken his foe. Yet grief weighed upon him, the loss of Pholus, the centaur who had shown kindness. Even triumph came at a price. Still, there was no time to rest. Eurystheus soon proclaimed the fifth labor, a task as filthy as it was impossible, Hercules was to clean, in a single day, the stables of King Augeas, where thousands of cattle had filled the halls with filth for decades. A trial not of combat, but of wit and ingenuity. Part 6, The Fifth Labor, the Augean Stables. After the Erymanthian boar was bound and delivered, Eurystheus sought to humiliate Hercules rather than kill him. The next task seemed less glorious, but no less impossible, to clean the Augean stables in a single day. The stables belonged to King Augeas of Elis, who owned herds numbering in the thousands, oxen, horses, goats, sheep, and cattle beyond counting. For 30 years, the stables had never once been cleaned. The filth piled high, mountains of dung that reeked to the heavens. Not even the slaves of Elis dared approach it. To ask Hercules, the greatest hero of Greece, to wallow in such filth was an insult Eurystheus relished. Hera laughed from Olympus. Surely, she thought, the son of Zeus would refuse such disgrace. Meeting King Augeas. Hercules journeyed to Elis, where he found Augeas seated on his throne, smug and wealthy, surrounded by fattened herds. King Augeas, Hercules said, I have been commanded to cleanse your stables in a single day. Augeas burst into laughter. If you, son of Zeus, can accomplish such a feat, I shall reward you with 1/10 of my herds. But I think you will drown in dung before the day is out. Hercules nodded, concealing his true intent. For he knew that brute strength would not avail him here, no shovel could empty centuries of filth in a single day. He needed cunning. The ingenious plan. Hercules examined the stables, vast halls of stone choked with filth. Nearby ran 2 mighty rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, their waters swift and deep. A plan formed in his mind. With pickaxe and sheer strength, he tore open the stable walls. He carved great channels from the rivers, bending their waters toward the stables. Then, with one mighty heave, he broke the barriers. The torrents rushed forth, roaring like thunder. Waves of water flooded the stables, sweeping away years of filth in a single surge. The dung poured out into the plains, leaving the floors gleaming clean beneath the current. By sunset, the Augean stables were spotless. Not by hands and sweat, but by wit and the might of nature itself. Augeas' betrayal. When Hercules returned for his promised reward, Augeas revealed his treachery. You performed this deed under Eurystheus' orders, the king sneered. I owe you nothing. Be gone from Elis. Hercules' eyes blazed with fury, but he kept his hand from his sword. He would return one day to punish Augeas' dishonor, but not now. His labors came first. Eurystheus' trick. When word reached Eurystheus, he gloated. This labor does not count, he proclaimed, for you were promised payment. It was not done in the spirit of service. Thus, though the Augean stables were cleansed, Hercules was cheated once more. Toward the 6th labor. Still, Hercules did not falter. He had proven that even a task of filth and humiliation could be turned into triumph with cleverness and resolve. Strength was his gift, but wisdom was his ally. Yet Eurystheus had no intention of relenting. The next trial would once again test Hercules' might against death itself. From the skies, Eurystheus commanded. Go to the marshes of Stymphalos and rid the land of the monstrous Stymphalian birds, whose iron beaks and wings of bronze devour men like grain. Hercules tightened a lion's pelt about his shoulders, his club in hand. Another battle awaited. Part 7, the 6th labor, the Stymphalian birds. For his next trial, Eurystheus sent Hercules to the marshes of Stymphalos, where terror filled the skies. There dwelled a flock of monstrous birds, sacred to Ares, the god of war. Their feathers were bronze, their beaks sharp as spears, and their wings could launch a storm of metal quills that tore through flesh like arrows. The villagers dared not till their fields, for each dawn the birds descended, devouring crops, beasts, and men alike. The ground was littered with bones, and the marsh echoed with their shrieks. Hera herself had nurtured the flock, hoping they would end the hero's journey once and for all. The Marsh of Death. Hercules entered the marshlands, the air thick with rot, the reeds whispering in the wind. The water was dark, sucking at his boots, and the cries of the birds pierced the air. From the trees, bronze feathers rained down, embedding themselves into the ground like blades. He raised his shield, but he knew he could not fight them all head-on. The flock was vast, circling endlessly in the sky. His arrows, even dipped in Hydra's blood, would soon run out. Strength alone could not win this battle. A gift from Athena. As despair loomed, a shimmer of divine light broke through the marsh's gloom. Athena, goddess of wisdom, descended, her armor gleaming, her grey eyes sharp as steel. "Hercules," she said, "brute force will not serve you here. Take this gift." She handed him a pair of great bronze castanets, forged by Hephaestus himself. "Strike these together, and their clangor will drive the flock from their roosts. Then you may strike them down." Hercules bowed deeply. "My thanks, daughter of Zeus." The hunt. Climbing onto a rocky rise, Hercules raised the castanets and clashed them with all his might. A deafening clang split the air, louder than thunder, sharper than iron striking iron. The birds shrieked in terror, erupting from the trees in a black storm. Their wings beat like thunder, feathers slicing through the air. Hercules seized his bow, arrows blazing with Hydra's venom, and fired. One after another, the birds fell, writhing in the marsh, their bronze feathers clattering. Those not struck fled screeching into the horizon, never to return to Stymphalos. The marsh grew quiet, the air still once more. Hercules lowered his bow, sweat streaking his brow, the lion's pelt heavy on his shoulders. The land was free of the terror that had plagued it for generations. Eurystheus' fury. When Hercules returned with the tale of his triumph, Eurystheus' face twisted in rage. He had hoped the hero would be torn apart, his flesh stripped to bone by bronze feathers. Instead, Hercules had stood victorious, aided by the gods themselves. The king's voice quavered with false authority. "You may have driven them away, but many escaped. This labor, too, is unworthy of true glory." But the people knew the truth. They sang of how Hercules had cleansed the skies of death, how wisdom and strength together could scatter even the flock of Ares. Toward the seventh labor. Thus ended the sixth labor. Hercules had learned once more that the might of gods and mortals could intertwine, that even the son of Zeus was not above the gift of wisdom. But Hera's vengeance had no end. Eurystheus soon pronounced the next task. Hercules was to voyage across the sea, to the island of Crete, and capture alive the Cretan bull, a beast of divine fury that once carried Europa across the waves and now laid waste to the land. Another monster awaited. Part 8, the seventh labor, the Cretan bull. The next command from Eurystheus sent Hercules across the sea, to the island of Crete. There, a monstrous bull ravaged the land. This was no ordinary beast, it was the very bull that Poseidon, god of the sea, had once sent as a sign to King Minos. Its coat gleamed white as foam, its horns curved like crescent moons, and its strength was that of a living storm. But Minos had failed to sacrifice the bull as promised. In anger, Poseidon cursed the creature with madness, turning it into a force of chaos that trampled fields, shattered walls, and gored any who dared approach. The people of Crete prayed for deliverance. Eurystheus, smirking, believed Hercules would be crushed beneath the bull's hooves. Hera whispered her approval. Arrival on Crete. Hercules sailed across the Aegean, his lion's pelt flapping in the sea wind, his club at his side. When he reached Knossos, he was brought before King Minos, who sat upon his marble throne. "Son of Zeus," Minos said, "if you can rid my island of this beast, I will not hinder you. Capture it if you can. But beware, its fury is not of mortal flesh, but of Poseidon's own wrath." Hercules bowed and set out at once, following the path of destruction the bull left behind, torn fields, broken olive groves, and streams of blood where livestock had fallen. The confrontation. At last, he found it on a wide plain near the sea. The bull's breath steamed in the air, its hooves struck sparks against stone. When it saw Hercules, it lowered its massive head and charged, the earth shaking beneath its weight. Hercules waited, calm as stone. At the last instant, he leapt aside, seizing its horns with both hands. The bull bellowed, thrashing, dragging him across the ground. Hercules' feet gouged trenches in the earth as he wrestled the beast. The struggle was titanic. The bull heaved, its muscles straining like iron cables. But Hercules' grip was unbreakable. With a roar that echoed across the plain, he forced the creature to its knees, twisted its neck, and bound it with ropes forged of bronze. The journey back. Still alive, the bull snorted and struggled as Hercules dragged it to the shore. He built a great raft and bound the beast upon it. The sea swelled, as if Poseidon himself watched with displeasure, but the hero's will could not be broken. Through storm and wave, he ferried the bull across the sea to Tiryns. When Eurystheus saw the beast alive before him, he quailed in terror. "Take it away!" he cried, diving yet again into his bronze jar. And so Hercules released the bull, which fled into the hills of Greece, where it would later sire legends of its own. The end of the seventh labor. Once more, Eurystheus' scheme had failed. Hercules had subdued the fury of a god-sent monster and brought it across the sea alive. His strength was not only a weapon, but a chain that bound even divine beasts. But Eurystheus' heart knew no peace. At Hera's urging, he declared the next labor, Hercules must journey to Thrace, land of savage warriors, and seize the man-eating mares of King Diomedes. These were no mere animals, but horses that fed on human flesh, their eyes wild with bloodlust, their iron jaws gnashing for the taste of men. A labor of horror awaited. Part 9, the eighth labor, the mares of Diomedes. No sooner had the Cretan bull been delivered than Eurystheus announced Hercules' next trial. This time, the hero was to travel far north to Thrace, to seize the mares of Diomedes, a task steeped in terror. These were no ordinary horses. They belonged to King Diomedes, son of Ares, and they fed not on grass or grain but on the flesh of men. Their eyes glowed red with hunger, their iron jaws clattered, eager for blood. Their shrieks echoed across the plains, striking fear into the hearts of warriors. Many had tried to steal them, but none had returned. Hera rejoiced. Surely now Hercules would perish, torn limb from limb by the savage beasts. Arrival in Thrace. Hercules crossed the mountains and reached the barbaric land of the Bistones, Diomedes' people. There, by the shore, the mares were chained with iron, stamping and frothing at the mouth. Their smell of blood filled the air, and their hooves shattered stone when they struck the ground. But Hercules knew the mares' savagery came not only from their nature, but from their master. Diomedes, cruel and merciless, delighted in feeding strangers to his beasts. The clash with Diomedes. Hercules and his band of companions stormed the stables. At once, Diomedes appeared, leading his warriors, weapons raised. A fierce battle broke out upon the Thracian plains. Hercules fought like a whirlwind. His club crushed shields, his arrows, tipped with Hydra's venom, pierced armor and flesh alike. The ground ran red with blood. At last, Hercules faced Diomedes himself, son of Ares, a man of towering strength. The clash shook the earth. Sword struck club, sparks flying. But Hercules, mightier by far, overpowered him. With a final heave, he hurled Diomedes into the jaws of his own mares. The taming of the mares. The beasts, mad with hunger, devoured their master. But when their bellies were full, their frenzy ebbed. Their eyes dimmed, their jaws stilled. At last, they could be led like ordinary horses. Hercules bound them with iron chains and set out for Tiryns, driving the subdued mares across plains and rivers. The land trembled at the sight, for monstrous steeds, once feared by nations, now tamed beneath the hand of the son of Zeus. Eurystheus' fear. When Eurystheus saw the mares, his heart quailed. Their shrieks filled the palace courtyard, and the king leapt into his bronze jar, his voice muffled with terror. Keep them away. Hercules, remove them at once. So Hercules released the mares. Some say they were freed into the wilds of Olympus, others that they were dedicated to the gods. Whatever their fate, they were seen no more. Toward the 9th labor. Thus ended the 8th labor. Hercules had proven that even the most savage of beasts could be subdued, and that cruelty, when turned upon itself, could be its own undoing. But Eurystheus was relentless. At Hera's urging, he now declared a trial that would take Hercules beyond Greece, into foreign lands across the sea. Bring me the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, the king demanded. The Amazons were fierce warrior women, daughters of Ares, unmatched in battle. Hippolyta's golden girdle was a gift from the war god himself, a symbol of her power and authority. To claim it meant facing an army of the deadliest fighters the world had ever known. Part 10, the 9th labor, the girdle of Hippolyta. The next command of Eurystheus drove Hercules beyond the borders of Greece, to the lands of the Amazons, a nation of warrior women feared across the world. Their queen, Hippolyta, daughter of Ares, wore a girdle of gold and leather, a divine gift from her father, symbol of her power and sovereignty. Eurystheus demanded this girdle, not because he had need of it, but out of malice, hoping Hercules would perish at the hands of the Amazons. Hera, of course, urged him on. The journey to the Amazons. Hercules gathered a band of companions and sailed across the Black Sea, enduring storms and hostile shores. They finally reached the city of Themyscira, where the Amazons lived. The warriors met them with spears and bows, their armor gleaming, their steeds swift. But Queen Hippolyta herself came forth, tall, fierce, yet noble in bearing. When Hercules explained his mission, she did not rage. Instead, she regarded him with curiosity. Son of Zeus, she said, you seek my girdle. Perhaps it is right to grant it, for your deeds are mighty and your name is just. Moved by his honor, she agreed to give him the girdle freely. Peace might have been made that day, had Hera not interfered. Hera's treachery. Hera, watching from the heavens, could not allow Hercules to succeed so easily. She descended in the guise of an Amazon warrior and spread lies among the ranks. Hercules has come not to bargain, but to steal our queen and enslave us all. The Amazons, furious, took up their weapons and charged. The battle. The plain before Themyscira became a battlefield. Arrows darkened the sky, swords rang against shields, horses screamed as they clashed. Hercules fought with valor, his lion's skin turning aside blades, his club felling warriors in great arcs. But he sought no needless slaughter. He fought to defend, not to conquer. Yet the tide of Amazons was endless, and blood stained the earth. At last, Hercules faced Hippolyta herself. She fought with skill and fury, but his strength was greater. With sorrow in his heart, he overcame her, and seized the girdle from her waist. The aftermath. The Amazons, seeing their queen defeated, broke ranks and fled into the forests. Hercules stood amidst the ruin, the girdle heavy in his hands. He had won, but at a cost. What might have been a peaceful exchange had become a battle of blood, poisoned by Hera's deceit. With grief, he returned to his ship, girdle secured, and sailed back toward Tiryns. Eurystheus' delight. When Hercules laid the girdle before Eurystheus, the cowardly king rejoiced, not because he desired it, but because Hercules had been forced into yet another storm of blood. Hera whispered to him that more awaited. And so Eurystheus declared the next labor. Go now to the far west, beyond the pillars of Heracles, to the land of Geryon. Bring me his red cattle. This was no simple herd. Geryon himself was a giant with 3 bodies, fused as one, and he was guarded by monsters of land and sky. To succeed, Hercules would have to traverse the very edges of the known world. The son of Zeus prepared himself once again, for the journey to the edge of the earth. Part 11, the 10th labor, the cattle of Geryon. Eurystheus' next command sent Hercules farther than ever before, to the western edge of the world, beyond the pillars of Hercules, where the sun dipped into the ocean each night. There dwelt Geryon, a fearsome giant with 3 bodies joined at the waist, 3 heads crowned with iron helmets, and 6 arms wielding weapons of war. His prized herd of red cattle, guarded by monstrous beasts, was to be brought back to Greece. Eurystheus smirked, certain this task was impossible. Hera smiled too, knowing the journey would drive Hercules through deserts, mountains, and seas, perhaps to his doom. Crossing the desert. Hercules began his trek westward, through scorching deserts where no shade lay. The sun beat upon him mercilessly. In his rage, he lifted his bow and shot an arrow at the blazing sky itself. The sun god Helios, startled, appeared and admired the hero's defiance. "Mortal son of Zeus," Helios said, "your courage burns bright. Take this." He gave Hercules a golden cup, vast as a ship, in which the sun sailed each night across the ocean. With this divine vessel, Hercules crossed the waters to reach the farthest western isle. The guardian of the herd. On the island, the cattle of Geryon grazed, magnificent beasts with hides the color of flame. But they were guarded by Orthrus, a 2-headed hound as savage as Cerberus, and by Eurytion, the herdsman. Hercules advanced, club raised. Orthrus lunged, both jaws snapping, but with a single blow he crushed the beast. Eurytion came next, spear flashing, but Hercules struck him down as well. The red cattle bellowed and scattered across the fields, but Hercules began to round them up, driving them toward the shore. The coming of Geryon. But Geryon could not be denied. The giant advanced, 3 faces glaring, 3 shields raised, 3 spears poised to kill. His footsteps shook the ground, his voice thundered like storm. Hercules readied his bow. He knocked an arrow dipped in Hydra's venom and let fly. It pierced one of Geryon's foreheads, burning through flesh and bone. The giant roared, staggered, yet raised his remaining weapons. Hercules loosed again, striking the second chest, then the third. With a final cry that echoed across the sea, Geryon toppled, his bodies collapsing like mountains. Driving the herd. Victorious, Hercules herded the cattle into Helios' golden cup and sailed back across the ocean. The journey was long, beset with trials. At one point, Hera sent gadflies to sting the herd, scattering them across the fields of Italy. Hercules raged but pursued tirelessly, gathering them again, his strength unbroken. At last, he brought the red cattle to Eurystheus. Eurystheus' terror. The king, peering from his bronze jar, quailed at the sight of the herd. He dared not touch them. The divine cattle were later sacrificed to Hera, or, as some say, returned to Helios. Once more, Hercules had triumphed. Yet Eurystheus' envy and Hera's hatred did not end. 2 labors yet remained, greater than all that had come before. "Go," the king commanded, his voice trembling, "and bring me the golden apples of the Hesperides." These were no ordinary fruits. They grew in a hidden garden at the edge of the world, guarded by nymphs and a dragon that never slept. Only gods knew its location. To steal them was to trespass into divine realms. A labor fit for immortals now awaited Hercules. Part 12, the 11th labor, the golden apples of the Hesperides. Eurystheus' new command sent Hercules upon a quest unlike any before. He was to find and bring back the golden apples of the Hesperides, fruits that shone with divine light. These apples were no earthly treasure, they grew in a hidden garden at the western edge of the world, a gift from Gaia to Hera on her wedding day. Guarding the sacred tree were the Hesperides, nymphs of the evening, and a monstrous dragon named Ladon, coiled around the trunk, with 100 heads that never slept. Even the gods rarely approached the place. For a mortal to attempt such a theft seemed impossible. Seeking the garden. The greatest challenge was not the dragon, but the path. No mortal knew the exact location of the garden. Hercules wandered across strange lands, following whispers and omens. He came to the Caucasus Mountains, where he found Prometheus, the Titan who had stolen fire for mankind, chained to the rock. Each day, an eagle of Zeus tore at his liver, only for it to grow back at night. The Titan writhed in endless agony. Hercules, moved by pity, raised his bow and shot the eagle down. The chains shattered. Prometheus, freed after centuries, cried out in gratitude. "Son of Zeus," he said, "I will give you the knowledge you seek. The apples lie in the garden of my daughters, the Hesperides. But beware the dragon, and beware Hera's wrath. Only with cunning may you succeed." Meeting Atlas. Prometheus advised Hercules to seek Atlas, the Titan who bore the heavens upon his shoulders. Atlas was father to the Hesperides and knew the way. Hercules found him at the edge of the earth, bowed beneath the weight of the sky, his muscles straining for eternity. Atlas groaned when Hercules approached. "What do you want, mortal?" "I seek the golden apples," said Hercules. "Lend me your aid." Atlas' eyes gleamed. "I can fetch them for you, for my daughters guard the tree. But you must bear the heavens in my stead until I return." The burden of the sky. Hercules agreed. Carefully, he took the weight of the heavens upon his shoulders. The vault of stars pressed down, vast beyond measure, crushing his mortal frame. His knees trembled, his back screamed in agony, but he held fast. Atlas strode away, free for the first time in ages, and soon returned with the apples gleaming in his hands. Their light glowed like the sun itself. "These are what you seek," Atlas said. "Yet now that I am free, I will not take back the burden. I will carry the apples myself to Eurystheus. You may remain here forever beneath the sky." Hercules' cunning. But Hercules was not so easily deceived. "A wise plan, Atlas," he said. "Yet I beg you, hold the heavens again but for a moment, so I may adjust my cloak for the strain. Then you may depart in freedom." Atlas, unsuspecting, set the burden once more upon his shoulders. Instantly, Hercules seized the apples and strode away, leaving the Titan trapped again beneath the vault of the world. The return. Hercules carried the apples back across the earth, their glow lighting his path. When Eurystheus beheld them, he gaped in awe, yet dared not touch them, for they were sacred to the gods. In the end, Athena herself returned the apples to their rightful place in the garden. Once more, Hercules had triumphed, through not only strength, but wit. Yet one final labor remained, darker than all before. Eurystheus trembled as he gave the command. "Go down into the realm of the dead. Bring me Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades." This was no longer a task of this world. To descend into the underworld meant to walk where no living man should tread. Part 13, the 12th labor, the capture of Cerberus. At last, Eurystheus gave Hercules his most dreadful command: descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the monstrous hound that guarded its gates. This was no simple beast. Cerberus was born of Typhon and Echidna, brother to Hydra and Chimera, with 3 snarling heads, a serpent for a tail, and a mane of writhing snakes. No living mortal had ever crossed his path and returned. Even Eurystheus trembled when he gave the order. Surely this would end Hercules once and for all. Preparing for the descent. Before setting out, Hercules sought the counsel of the gods. He traveled to Eleusis, where he underwent sacred rites, gaining the blessing to pass into Hades' realm as no mere intruder but as one on a divine mission. Armed with his club and clad in the Nemean lion's skin, Hercules journeyed to Tenaron, where a dark cave gaped into the earth. He descended through shadows deeper than night, through mists that chilled the soul, until he reached the banks of the Styx. Crossing the river. There, the ferryman Charon awaited, silent in his boat. No living man was ever permitted aboard, but Hercules' presence shook even the underworld. The hero's gaze, his divine aura, and the sanction of the rites compelled Charon to obey. For the first and only time, the ferryman rode a living soul across the black waters. On the far bank, the spirits of the dead drifted like pale smoke. Some fled in fear, for the son of Zeus glowed like a torch among shadows. Others, long-forgotten kings and warriors, called out in awe of his name. Meeting Hades and Persephone. At last, Hercules stood before the thrones of Hades and Persephone, rulers of the dead. He bowed with respect. Lord of the underworld, Queen of the Shades, he said, I come not to defile your realm, but to fulfill a labor laid upon me. Grant me leave to take your hound Cerberus to the world above. Hades regarded him coldly, but Persephone's heart was softened by his humility. You may take him, Hades said at last, but only if you master him by strength alone, with no weapon but your hands. The battle with Cerberus. Hercules journeyed to the gates, where Cerberus lurked. The beast erupted from the shadows, 3 mouths roaring, eyes blazing with fire, snake-tail hissing. His chains rattled like thunder as he lunged. The ground shook as Hercules grappled with him. One head bit at his arm, another snapped at his throat, the third howled with fury. The serpent tail coiled about him, tightening like iron. But Hercules' strength was beyond mortal. He seized all 3 heads in his arms, forced the jaws apart, and crushed the beast to the ground. Cerberus writhed, venom dripping, but could not break free. At last, subdued yet alive, the hound whimpered beneath his grasp. Hercules bound him in chains and dragged him upward, through caverns and shadows, until the light of day shone once more. The terror of Eurystheus. When Hercules appeared before Eurystheus, the monstrous hound snarling at his side, the cowardly king shrieked and dove headlong into his bronze jar, shaking with terror. Enough! Enough! He cried. Take him back, at once. And so Hercules returned Cerberus to Hades' realm, unharmed, as promised. The end of the labors. Thus ended the 12th and final labor. 12 impossible trials had been set, born of Hera's hatred and Eurystheus' fear. And yet Hercules, through strength, courage, and cunning, had triumphed over monsters, beasts, and even death itself. The world whispered his name with reverence. He was no longer just a hero of Greece, but a legend eternal. Part 14, Epilogue, The Legacy of Hercules. The 12 labors were done. Hercules had overcome what no mortal, or even God, was ever meant to endure. He had slain the Nemean lion, cut down the Hydra, captured beasts of land, sky, and sea, cleansed Augea's stables in a single day, defeated armies, crossed the edges of the world, stolen from gods, and even faced death itself in the underworld. Eurystheus, the trembling king who had sought to destroy him, was left humiliated, for each cruel command had only magnified Hercules' glory. Hera, who had plotted his downfall from birth, had been thwarted at every turn. But Hercules' story did not end with the labors. They were only the foundation of a legend that stretched beyond Greece, across centuries, into the hearts of all who heard it. The hero transformed. The labors were more than punishments, they were a crucible. Through them, Hercules transformed. At first, he had been a man consumed by guilt, forced to atone for tragedy. But each trial stripped away weakness and forged him into something greater. He learned not only to wield strength, but to temper it with patience, to balance power with cunning, and to bow in humility even when he could crush mountains. In the garden of the Hesperides, he proved his wit. In the underworld, he showed his courage before the gods of death. In every labor, he became not only a slayer of monsters, but a protector of humankind. A symbol of humanity. The Greeks looked to Hercules and saw in him more than muscle. He was the image of their own struggles, the endless trials life placed before mortals. His victories symbolized hope, that no matter how impossible the burden, courage and perseverance could triumph. Sailors invoked his name when facing storms, soldiers before battle, farmers when taming the land. Across temples and songs, Hercules was remembered not as a flawless being, but as a man who suffered, erred, and rose again stronger. His humanity was his true greatness. The wrath of Hera and the peace of Olympus. Though Hera's hatred lingered, even she could not deny what Hercules had become. In time, when his mortal life ended, Zeus brought him to Olympus. There, the fires of mortality burned away, and Hercules was made immortal among the gods. Hera, at last reconciled, welcomed him as her son. His place in Olympus was secured not by birthright alone, but by trials endured, by labors fulfilled, and by the legacy he left behind. The eternal legacy. For centuries, poets, storytellers, and artists told and retold the 12 labors. They carved them into marble, painted them upon vases, and sang them in the halls of kings. Each labor stood as a symbol. The lion, of courage. The hydra, of resilience. The Ceryneian hind, of patience. The boar, of endurance. The stables, of ingenuity. The birds, of resourcefulness. The bull, of mastery. The mares, of justice. The girdle, of sacrifice. The cattle, of perseverance. The apples, of cunning. Cerberus, of facing death itself. Together, they formed the portrait of the greatest hero Greece ever knew. Closing. And so, the tale of Hercules and his 12 labors comes to its end. From his first step into the lion's cave to his final return from the underworld, he walked a path no mortal dared. He bore burdens no man should bear, yet never yielded. His triumphs were not only for himself, but for all mankind. Even now, his story endures. For whenever we face challenges that seem insurmountable, we recall the son of Zeus, who wrestled with monsters, gods, and fate itself, and prevailed. The name Hercules has become eternal, written not just in the stones of temples, but in the spirit of human perseverance.